surgery as we do in cataract. Only thing, precision is here the key. We have to be very, very careful of our proper alignment. If there is a 3-degree misalignment, we got a 10% reduced effect. For 8-degree misalignment, we get around 25% reduced toric effect. For 15-degree, it turns to 50% reduction of the toric effect. And somehow, if we do it a wrong axis, that means almost on 90-degree, we are doubling the existing cylinder. So we had to be very, very precise. The question comes, how we can achieve this precision with simple devices if we don't have very, very expensive devices. So for a toric surgery, we have 4 goals. The first one is manage ocular surface before surgery. That is very important. I will come and discuss this one. Then to acquire the most precise information for toric IOL calculation, that means how much the power of lines should be there, how should be your marking. That's very, very important. Then third step is accurate alignment. And fourth, of course, we should have good postoperative rotational stability. So starting with preoperative workup in a toric case, we have to exclude cases which are not suitable for this, and we have to do a proper case selection. Counseling is very, very important. We can have a demo of these things. We can show the patient how much vision is going to improve with toric lenses, but still always under-promise those patients. It's not a perfect thing, so we have to under-promise. Of course, we are getting best results in most of the cases. Then if patient is using contact lenses, we have to discontinue contact lenses well in time. Say for soft contact lenses, you have to discontinue for 1 week. For GP lens, it should be around 3 weeks. Or if in doubt, you can do a topography. If there is a warpage, you can wait for more. You have to record the vision, then autocolorimetry. If you have corneal topography, that's very good. And refraction, optical biometry is a standard of care now. You can have IOL Master, Lenstar, AirScan, or whatever IOL optical biometries give you, it will work. Then fundus evolution and OCT. Dry eye syndrome is again very important if you're going to a toric practice. Then prevention of CME, just like in other cataract cases. So what are the relative exclusion? If there is an irregular astigmatism, don't try it. Post-effective surgery is a bit dicey. I'll advise for surgeons who are initiating not to start with this one. Maybe after some experience, they can do it. If there is a corneal edema, if there is a corneal dystrophy, if there is a surgical complications like during surgery, you get pupil damage, if you get a PCR, if there is a vitreous loss, if there is journal instability. So we know the lens is not going to stay in the same orientation. So please avoid in these conditions. Then coming to the power calculations, first thing is the keratometry. The keratometry can be done by various ways. We can do manual, we can do automated, we can do topographic keratometry. And we have to take the corneal reflection only, not the total reflection or keratometry as such. So there's one thing we have to keep in mind, that most of the patients, they have some astigmatism on the posterior surface also. So if that is around 0.5 diopter of cylindrical number, that is with the rule in these cases. Sorry, that's on the against the rule. So if you're doing with the rule group, you have to do mean overcorrection by 0.5 diopter. If you're doing against the rule, you have to reduce it by 0.3 diopter. So just to simplify it, say if your K1, K2 reading is usually the higher one. K1 is flat one if you're doing an autocolorimeter. If your K2 reading is on 90 degree, that means you have to reduce 90 or maybe around 70, maybe around 120. So if it's around 90, then you have to reduce by 0.35 diopter. And similarly, if it's on 180, 170, 160, you have to reduce it by 0.5 diopter. Of course, at present, we are able to measure it. But if you don't have those equipments, you can just assume this and do your calculation accordingly. There should be one thing is very important. Whatever instrument you are using, the calibration should be very, very important. Even as manual calibration, if you are doing a manual keratometer, if you are using even high-end keratometers also, by any means, your instrument has to be well calibrated. Take at least 3 readings, take the average, and it should be done before any apprehension tonometry in your clinic. And the one important thing is ask the patient to blink the eyes. If there is some people have dry eyes, that will give a good reading if you wet the eyes with patient's tear. Don't put any drops there. If you feel like eyes too dry, you can use a lubricant, but it's better to ask the patient to blink. Whatever the patient, any patient, you have to ask the blink before taking reading. So there should be a critical approach to automated measurement. If you are getting different values, you have to look for cause. So these are various instruments. We can have SIM K, Auto K, Chamflins, slit scanning K, manual K. Sometimes it may be confusing if you got too many equipments. Know what to do. In these conditions, you have to look for the cause. The most common cause is dry eye, or your instruments are not well calibrated. So you have to look for those things. If these are okay, then you have to repeat that your test and see if there is a micro squint there. If there is a very dense cataract, the patient may not fix again. If there is amblyopia on these patients, then, or if patient is having a squint, then you have to take care of these things. Sometimes the patients have macular pathologies. In these cases, it's very difficult to get a central reading. So you have to see that the patient is straight, is looking on the center of the object with what you are trying to show, and try to get a good reading of keratometry. So these are the various optical biometers. Of course, they are improving with everyone. So at present, we have the Lenstar 900, a very good one. Then IOL Master 700, which is again a very good one. The advantage with IOL Master 700 is it can directly measure the posterior corneal curvature. So it has a swept source OCT, which helps us to know the total amount of keratometry, that means the anterior surface as well as the posterior surface. So it's not assumption, but we do actually know it. And we can use Barrett-Takeda Universal or Barrett-Takeda Toric is inbuilt that can be used with this. If you don't have these, if you have a simple instrument, if even you are using ultrasonic method, doesn't matter. Only thing you have to have very accurate K, that's going to help you a lot. And if you're starting, that's very important thing is to note down your surgeon's induced astigmatism. We have to remember that every corneal incision, it may be straight, it may be oblique, it may be anyone, it's going to cause some astigmatism. It may be as low as 0.12, it may be as high as 0.75. So only thing you can do, you can go on this website. There, it's a sort of Excel, or you can even make your own Excel sheet. Just note it down. Only thing you have to take care is your surgical position. Suppose you operate on 110 degree, you operate on 90, you operate on 190, keep it constant. Keep your K1, K2 noted in normal cases. Then after the patient has gone surgery, stabilized for some time, then take again the K1, K2 and see how much the difference you got. With this, you will be able to determine your personal SIA. That's very, very important. Good surgeons hardly have 0.12 or maybe 0.25, but many surgeons can have up to 0.75. So we have to rule it out. We have to be very, very sure what our personal SIA is. Then various calculators are available online. I'll not go to detail. Only thing you have to read the various readings like K1, K2, axial length. All these things you have to fill, and they'll suggest what is the proper lens and where should be the axis of this one. If you don't want to use, you can use an iToric app. These all are calculators available online and free of cost. This is how you fill the chart. You have to fill the K1, K2, you have to choose the I, whatever the formula you want to use, you can fill up. Then IL power, and ultimately you get a suggestion. What is this is something like you got a diagram. This will show where the lens has to be placed, which type of the lens with what our cylinder is good for this patient. So it is a very helpful thing. Take use of these things. Now come the very important thing for beginners, how to mark the eye. That's known as the reference marking. This has to be done before surgery. It should be done always on sitting position, because if the patient lies, the cyclotorsion can change the things. So never take on lying position. Patient has to sit straight. Then it's a free hand. You can just mark, seeing on this thing. It's not very accurate. Then you can use a bubble marker. These are various type of bubble marker. This one is gravity driven. Again, pendulum based, very accurate. But I think slit lamp marking is the most accurate and very easy to do. It avoids a lot of complication. Only things you have to know how to do it. You have a degree mark on your slit lamp. It's there on the most of the slit limb. You have to align the illumination. Ask the patient to close the other eye. That's very important. Patient should not focus on two eyes. He should see from one eye. That's a very important thing. You see a bright corneal reflex. It should be a beam shaped. And use a fine tipped marker. First we mark the nasal side. Then we move to the temporal side. So normally we mark 0 to 180. That is reference mark. If these are accurate, you are going to get an accurate marking for your axis also. The important thing, you have to make sure your patient sits straight. Sometimes we are behind the machine, we can't see it properly, whether the patient is straight or not. Ask your assistant to make sure that the patient is seeing straight. Otherwise, your axis will go haywire. That's very, very important. We often miss it. Then this is the beam you are seeing. It's not properly in the center. So it's not accurate. You have to focus it on a Purkinje's images. This is incorrect. Beam above the Purkinje's images. This is the center position. Your correct position, a bright Purkinje image is there. That means you are right on the mark. Now you can mark on the sides on the limbus. If you are using a slit lamp, sometimes there is a fallacy in the slit lamp also. It may not be very, very accurate. Sometimes it's lying on the ophthalmic chair unit, then the plane may not be straight. We are assuming that it's a very straight, then we get a 180 degree. If you're not getting it, sometimes there may be some wrongs in it. So there is a system, it's the machine, this is a simple system. It's a gravity based, it's a BRC Torus axis marker. It's available from Joja. You can fit on your slit lamp and you can just cross verify your slit, whether you're getting it proper or not. The second option is you can use your iPhone. There are a lot of apps available. Just like I'll go on that also. That's axis toric marker. You can just keep it 180 and you can cross verify it. Or you can fit that slit, your phone in the one of the eyepiece, and there also you can do it. I'll come to that one, how we can confirm it using a smartphone. So this is very important. Sometimes the slit may not be exactly on 180. It may be showing you on the slit lamp that's 180 degree, but it may not be there. So you have to verify before doing these things. These are the axis marking intraoperatively. These are the various planners. If you have high-end things, you can use them. Let's say from Hoya. I'll not go detail because this requires a lot of explanation also. This is a simple thing that's called Axis Assistant. This is available on iPhone. It's based on the gyroscope that, you know, if you keep a water in a glass, if you tilt it, is that the level of water will be almost horizontal to Earth. That is parallel to Earth. So it's almost 180 degree. That's called the gyroscope. Same system is being used in iPhone. And this is a free of cost. You can use this instrument. It's very, very useful. It can be used at pre-operative mode, where you can find the axis where you want to place it. You can fix on the eyepiece. It's very, very easy. And if you want to make a limbal incision, even you can use it, how much the arc of limbal incision you want to do. If you don't want to do toric, or if you want to use it in a post-operative period. So if there is some refractive surprise, there is a tutorial you can go and read out in. This is you can make the camera on and precisely see whether your axis is proper or not, your marking is proper or not. You can check it again. This is a post-operative mode. Suppose you have implanted the lens and you want to see. Again, you have to ask the patient to sit on the slit lamp and you can verify after dilating whether the lens is properly aligned or not. These are the other apps. That's a very good one from Toric. That's from Graham Barrett. Again, a free of cost. And this is the newest one. That is Eye Access Check. It's one of the best app you can have. It's, of course, it's a paid one, but the charges are very nominal. You have to go through the tutorial and you'll find it's very, very easy and make the lives very easy. And those so-called high-end things like Varion, other things, they are not really necessary. They're good, but you can achieve the same results by using these apps. I think everyone should use it. You load in your mobile phone, play with it, and soon you'll find it very, very easy. It is to mark your access during the intraoperative period. You have to place the ring on the first, your reference mark, then not access wherever you want to mark it. Then comes the surgical part. So it is of 3 parts. Once you introduce the lens, it's the same surgery, whatever you in the routine cataract. Only thing, there should be gross alignment. You had to be short of your proper position, almost 15 to 20 degree. Leave it there. Remove all the OVD. That's very, very important. Sometimes there is a OVD behind the lens, which causes rotation and spike also. So you have to be very, very clear that you have to wash it thoroughly. And then you do the final alignment. It's like you have to push the lens slightly on the back. And I prefer doing hydroimplantation. I don't use visco on that procedure. It's a viscoless. There are less chances of rotation and then less chances of IOP spike. You can use any method which you are more familiar or more comfortable. But hydroimplantation have a lot of advantages over visco implantation. But both the things work if you take out the OVD thoroughly. That's very, very important. Then sometimes what happens, you're doing surgery and suddenly your pupil constricts and you can't see where those marks are gone. Then it's very difficult to rotate your lens. With one hand, you remove the pupil on one side and try to see, but it makes the life very difficult. Now we got a very good marker. That's from Dr. Sri Ganesh. It's a simple, you can see it's a straight marker. There is a indentation edge in between. This is a rough side. It's not very sharp. It's just make an indentation on the lens. So what we do if a pupil is constricted, we just put this one over the lens in the cartridge, right? We are not putting the lens inside. We are just doing it on the cartridge. Lens is inside. We just make an indentation. You can see there are 2 holes on it. From these holes, you can see your marks on the lens. Once you press it, there is a small indentation. That's a mark on the lens, which disappears after some time. I'll show you that one. You can see that the indentation mark is here. Now it's become very easy to align the lens. Even the pupil is constricted to any size, you can align it properly and see whether your lens is aligned to the marks or not. So this is a very good instrument. It's available with Epsilon Ganesh marker. You can get it. It's going to make your life much easier. Then I think I'll not go in detail of these things. It's not for beginners. So let us come why rotational stability is important to us. Off-axis rotation, we have just seen, it reduces the effect of our cylindrical number. So 1 degree rotation can cause 3.3% decrease, 30% cause up to 15 degree rotation. So we have to be very, very sure our lens should not rotate. We have to check it thoroughly. Now, sometimes what happens, you did everything well, but your results are not up to the mark. Now, what should we do? So there is a website that's called www.astigmatismfix.com. You can go on that one. There is a toric result analyzer. You can feed all your data and that will let you know. Sometimes it's not the misalignment only. Sometimes there may be other causes. One of your loop may be on the, may not be in the back. And there are other things we have to verify with that one. So by comparing the current location of toric IL to a patient's current manifestation fraction, the toric results analyzer can determine if rotating the toric IL would decrease residual astigmatism or not. So if you have to do IL rotation, that's very important. You have to do almost around 1 week. The reason for waiting this much is once the lens stabilizes, there's small fibrosis. This fibrosis, if you do it immediately, if the lens has tendency to rotate, it will rotate again. But if there is a small fibrosis, it will keep the lens there. So rotate your lens if you want to after 1 week of initial surgery. Then again, this is a Varian. It's a, because you don't have to mark, you can see on the, you have to take a pre-reading on the table. You can, without marks, you can do. This is a wavefront abrometer Hola. Then you can plan, and on the OT table, you can just exactly plan where you have to put your lens. You can rotate accordingly. This is a lens from Air Group. The only thing is you have to implant it is on 0 to 180. The cylinder is inbuilt. Suppose you want to at 135 degree, whatever degree, they will make it's a custom made. So only thing you have to implant is 0 and 180 degree. So sometimes we get a problem what to do if we get a surprise. As far as IOL rotation we can do, that should be done around 1 week. IOL exchange should be kept for the last. If you think there is a gross negligence, there is a gross mismatch, only then you have to change it. Third is the piggyback IOL for suppose you have planted in non-toric IOL, or there is a gross undercorrection, you can use a piggyback IOL that is to be placed in the sulcus. Now we got a very good quality piggyback IOL from Rayner, from Care Group, you can do. And last but not the least, you can do laser correction of these patients to get a final outcome. So just to sum up, toric IOLs provide great rotational stability with optimal and accurate refractive results. It's now not a premium IOL, but a standard of care in cases of astigmatism. So in a patient with the astigmatism, if you're not putting a toric, you have to take a consent. Suppose sometimes patient is not willing, then you have to take a consent because you are not putting it. Why you are putting a plain lens, not a toric lens? Third, taking care of ocular surface is the most important for good results. Toric IOL provides unique spectacle independence and quality of life, leading to more patient satisfaction. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very nice presentation, Dr. Vinod.
Thank you, sir. So I think one or two things I told, like Ganesh IOL marker, that's a very good instrument, and it's available from Epsilon. It's a very good when the people constant. It's become very difficult to rotate it. It makes things much easy. Second, your slit lamp orientation has to be very right. That's to be perfect.
Dr. Vinod, one thing like in the end of the surgery, you like to remove OVD.
Yeah.
And why not to implant these lenses under irrigation itself?
That's I told you in my slide that I prefer hydroplantation.
Yeah,
hydroplantation that makes a lot much easier. I'm doing it for the last 4 or 5 years. I'm putting under hydro.
Yeah, that's what we are doing here.
Yeah, that's very safe.
Any comments from Dadia, sir?
Sir has covered the topic very well. Sir, I would like